The Silent Defense. Commander Sarah Chen stood at her post in the Lunar Defense Command, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing thousands of alien vessels approaching the solar system. The Meridian Alliance, as they called themselves, had spent the last 3 years systematically conquering every human colony beyond Neptune. Now they were coming for Earth itself, their massive fleet having just passed Saturn's orbit. Status report on Project Lazarus. She commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of humanity's fate resting on her shoulders. Dr. Marcus Webb, her chief scientist, looked up from his console. His weathered face reflected the blue glow of multiple screens surrounding him. The quantum shielding is holding at 98% efficiency. All 30 Lazarus vessels are maintaining perfect stealth signatures. The Meridians still have no idea they exist. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. For 5 years, humanity had appeared to focus solely on conventional defenses, orbital platforms, missile systems, and standard warships. It was all an elaborate deception. Deep within the asteroid belt, hidden in plain sight, Earth had been building something unprecedented. The Lazarus fleet represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. Warships equipped with experimental quantum drives that could bend both space and time. They were invisible to conventional sensors, capable of appearing seemingly out of nowhere, and armed with weapons that could target an enemy's past position as well as their present one. They're broadcasting again, Lieutenant Rivera announced from the communications station. The Meridian commander is demanding our surrender. Says they'll spare our major cities if we submit to immediate occupation. Sarah watched as more data streamed across her displays. The Meridian fleet was arranging itself into their standard attack formation, a massive sphere of smaller vessels protecting their capital ships. It was a formation that had proved invincible against conventional forces, but they had never faced anything like Lazarus. Send no response, Sarah ordered. Let them think we're paralyzed with fear. She opened a secure channel to all 30 Lazarus vessels. All commanders, this is Chen. Initialize quantum matrices. Prepare for Operation Ghostfire. Acknowledgements came in from each ship. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her chest. These crews had trained for 3 years in absolute secrecy, running countless simulations of this moment. They were humanity's best. Chosen not just for their skills, but for their ability to think creatively and adapt to the impossible situations quantum combat would create. The Meridian fleet continued its advance, their confidence evident in their tight formation. Their sensors would be showing them exactly what Earth wanted them to see: a handful of outdated defense platforms and a small fleet of conventional warships making a desperate last stand. Quantum matrices at full power, Dr. Webb reported. Time dilation fields are stable. We can initiate at your command. Sarah took a deep breath. Humanity had spent generations looking to the stars, dreaming of their place in the galaxy. The Meridians and their allies had tried to dictate that place, believing humans to be primitive, worthy only of subjugation. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All Lazarus vessels, she broadcast, execute Operation Ghostfire. Show them what humanity is capable of. 30 points of light flickered into existence around the Meridian fleet, appearing simultaneously at carefully calculated coordinates. The Lazarus ships shed their quantum veils, revealing sleek vessels of dark metal and pulsing energy. Before the aliens could react, space itself seemed to twist around them. The quantum weapons fired, their effects defying conventional physics. Some Meridian ships found themselves fighting enemies that appeared to be in multiple places at once. Others discovered their weapons passing harmlessly through temporal phantoms, while the real threats struck from completely different vectors. Multiple direct hits, Lieutenant Rivera reported, excitement creeping into his voice. Their formation is breaking apart. They're trying to coordinate a response, but their combat algorithms can't make sense of what they're seeing. Sarah watched as the mighty Meridian fleet, terror of a dozen star systems, fell into chaos. Their rigid military doctrine, so effective against conventional opponents, was worse than useless against an enemy that could attack from multiple points in space-time simultaneously. Meridian casualties at 20% and climbing, Dr. Webb announced. Their shields are useless against the quantum phase torpedoes. They've never seen anything like this. A new transmission cut through the command center. The Meridian commander's voice had lost all its previous arrogance. This is impossible. What are you? Sarah allowed herself to respond this time. We are humanity, and we're just getting started. The battle continued to unfold across her displays, but Sarah already knew the outcome. The Meridians had expected to find a primitive species cowering behind simple defenses. Instead, they had found an enemy that had turned their greatest weakness, their apparent technological inferiority, into an elaborate trap. As she watched the Meridian fleet attempt to regroup, only to be caught in another series of precisely coordinated quantum strikes, Sarah thought about all the human colonies that had fallen. After today, they would be free again. And the galaxy would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their ability to surprise even themselves with what they could achieve when pushed to the edge. The silent defense had worked perfectly. Earth's counterattack was just beginning. Operation Shadow Strike. The Meridian flagship Eternal Dominion shuddered as another quantum torpedo phased through its supposedly impenetrable shields. Supreme Commander Vextar gripped his command chair, mandibles clicking in frustration as he watched his mighty fleet scattered like leaves in a storm. Adaptive shielding is failing, his chief engineer reported, the usual crystalline tones of their species rough with strain. Their weapons exist in multiple temporal states simultaneously. We cannot defend against something that's attacking us from 3 different moments in time. Vextar's inner eyelids flickered rapidly as he processed this information. In 3 centuries of military service, he had never encountered anything like these human vessels. They appeared and disappeared at will, striking from impossible angles, their weapons violating what his people had thought were the immutable laws of physics. Back in Lunar Command, Sarah Chen was already implementing the second phase of humanity's counterattack. All Lazarus vessels, execute Shadow Strike protocols, she ordered. Dr. Webb, initiate the quantum field expansion. The scientist's fingers flew across his console, expanding quantum bubble now, ready to encompass the entire theater of operations. What happened next defied conventional description. The space around the battle seemed to fold in on itself, creating a bubble of altered space-time, where cause and effect became suggestions rather than laws. Inside this quantum field, the Lazarus ships could operate with even greater freedom, while the Meridian vessels found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to break every rule of warfare. By the first light, Vextar whispered as he watched 3 human ships apparently merge into one, fire a devastating barrage, and then split apart again. Each version of the vessel real and yet impossible. How long have they hidden this capability? The answer, of course, was that humanity had hidden it in plain sight. While the Meridians had watched Earth's conventional military preparations with smug superiority, the quantum research had been disguised as civilian energy projects, scattered across countless asteroids and moons. Multiple Meridian capital ships have broken formation, Lieutenant Rivera reported to Commander Chen. They're attempting to retreat, but the quantum field is preventing standard FTL jumps. Sarah nodded grimly. Deploy the temporal nets. Don't let them escape to warn their homeworld. Not yet. The Lazarus ships moved with practiced precision, their quantum drives creating a web of distorted space-time that trapped the Meridian vessels like insects in amber. Some ships found themselves reliving the same moment repeatedly, unable to break free. Others experienced time at different rates, their crews watching in horror as battles that took hours for them unfolded in seconds for their companions. Dr. Webb's voice carried an edge of concern. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from several Meridian vessels. They're attempting to synchronize their shield harmonics with our quantum field. Sarah's eyes narrowed. The Meridians were adapting faster than expected. It was one of the risks of revealing such advanced technology. Even in defeat, The enemy might learn enough to be dangerous. Initiate Protocol Omega, she commanded. All ships, switch to alternating quantum frequencies. Don't let them get a lock on our temporal signature. The battle space became even more chaotic as the Lazarus ships began shifting not just through space, but through different quantum frequencies. To the Meridian sensors, it would appear as though the human vessels were existing in multiple parallel universes simultaneously. In his flagship, Vextar watched another squadron of his best ships torn apart by weapons that seemed to strike from both the future and the past. His race had always prided themselves on their technological superiority, their understanding of the universe's fundamental laws. But these humans had taken those laws and turned them inside out. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer called out, "We're detecting a power surge in their quantum field. The readings are off the scale." Before Vextar could respond, space itself seemed to crystallize around his remaining ships. The quantum field had created a temporal dead zone, a space where time moved so slowly that it might as well have stopped completely. Sarah Chen watched the tactical display as the last Meridian ships were trapped in the temporal stasis field. The first major battle using quantum warfare was drawing to a close, but she felt no elation. Humanity had revealed its greatest technological achievement, and there would be consequences. All ships maintain quantum field integrity, she ordered. Dr. Webb, begin power-down sequence for the temporal nets. Lieutenant Rivera, prepare to establish communication with the Meridian flagship. It's time they understood exactly what they're dealing with. As the quantum effects began to stabilize, Sarah reflected on what this victory would mean. The Meridians had come expecting to find a primitive species ready for conquest. Instead, they had discovered that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their quantum technology. It was their ability to imagine the impossible and then make it real. The battle was won, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would need every bit of their newfound power to shape what came next. The quantum gambit. The quantum field had barely dissipated when the first encrypted transmissions began flooding in from the outer colonies. Commander Sarah Chen watched as reports of uprising after uprising scrolled across her screens. The Meridian occupation forces, cut off from their main fleet and shaken by news of their leader's defeat, were facing resistance on every human world they had conquered. They never bothered to learn why Earth stayed silent when they took our colonies, Lieutenant Rivera said, pride evident in his voice. They thought we were weak. They didn't realize we were preparing them for this moment. Sarah nodded, remembering the coded messages they'd been sending to the colonies for months. Hidden resistance cells, apparently crushed, had instead been quietly stockpiling weapons and gathering intelligence. Now, with the Meridian fleet in ruins, they were striking back with devastating precision. Dr. Webb approached her station, his tablet displaying a complex array of quantum readings. "Commander, we finished analyzing the data from the battle. The Meridians managed to collect more information about our quantum technology than we anticipated. Their adaptive systems were beginning to synchronize with our temporal frequencies. How long until they could replicate it?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Months, not years," Webb replied grimly. "They're quick learners, and they have resources we can't match, even with our quantum advantage." On the Meridian flagship, still held in a low-power temporal stasis field, Supreme Commander Vextar was reaching similar conclusions. His scientists had been analyzing every second of the battle, and while much of the human quantum technology remained beyond their comprehension, they were beginning to grasp its fundamental principles. "The humans have changed everything," he subvocalized to his neural recorder. "They haven't just defeated us. They've shattered our understanding of what's possible. The Council must be informed, no matter the cost to my standing." Sarah had anticipated this reaction. The Meridians' greatest strength, their rigid adherence to hierarchical order and technological superiority, had become their weakness. They couldn't conceive of simply accepting defeat. They would need to understand, to analyze, to adapt. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. "All Lazarus vessels, Initiate quantum signature randomization. Lieutenant Rivera, prepare the diplomatic package. The next few hours were crucial. While the Meridian leadership remained in temporal stasis, human quantum computers were rewriting the very code of their ship's quantum drives. Each vessel would now operate on a completely unique frequency, making it impossible to predict or counter their temporal effects. But Sarah knew they couldn't rely on technological superiority alone. That was the Meridian's mistake, and she wouldn't repeat it. Package ready, Rivera announced. Though I still think offering them any concessions is a mistake. We have them at our mercy. This isn't about mercy, Sarah replied, entering the final authorization codes. It's about understanding what victory really means. Dr. Webb, begin power down sequence for the stasis field. Let's show them how humans handle triumph. As the temporal effects faded, the Meridian flagship's systems slowly came back online. Vextar found himself facing not just Commander Chen's image on his view screen, but a detailed peace proposal that defied all his expectations. The humans weren't demanding unconditional surrender. They weren't even demanding reparations for their conquered colonies. Instead, they were offering something far more radical: partnership. Your civilization has spent centuries perfecting the science of space-time, Sarah told the stunned Meridian commander. We've spent centuries imagining what might be possible beyond those perfected theories. Together, we could achieve things neither of us can dream of alone. The proposal included joint research initiatives, shared defense protocols, and most surprisingly, an offer to help protect Meridian worlds from the very quantum weapons that had just devastated their fleet. You would share this technology? Vextar asked, his translator struggling to convey his mix of disbelief and suspicion. After what we did to your colonies, Sarah's response was measured but firm. We're sharing the possibility of it. The reality is that quantum warfare is now a fact of galactic life. We can either face its implications together, or we can watch it tear apart everything both our civilizations have built. As if to emphasize her point, new reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Other species, having witnessed the battle through their own long-range sensors, were already beginning their own quantum research programs. The balance of power that had held for centuries was crumbling. You planned this, Vextar realized, his inner eyelids flickering rapidly. The quantum weapons weren't just about defeating us. They were about changing the entire game. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's greatest weapon has always been our ability to imagine a different future, Supreme Commander. The question is, are you ready to imagine it with us? The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. In Lunar Command, Sarah Chen waited, knowing that this moment would determine not just the fate of two species, but the very future of how war and peace would be conducted in a universe where time itself had become a battlefield. Breaking point. The Galactic Council's emergency session erupted into chaos as the quantum sensor readings from the Earth Meridian battle played across their screens. Representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations watched in horror as humanity's quantum ships warped the very fabric of spacetime, wielding temporal mechanics like a surgeon's scalpel. In Lunar Command, Commander Sarah Chen received the diplomatic feeds with growing concern. Dr. Webb stood beside her, his normally steady hands trembling slightly as he processed the incoming data. 7 different species have already announced their own quantum research programs, he reported. The Arcturus Collective is claiming they've had similar technology all along. The Vega Syndicate is threatening preemptive strikes against anyone developing quantum weapons. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical displays. The Lazarus Fleet remained on high alert, their quantum signatures constantly shifting to prevent analysis. But they couldn't be everywhere at once. What's the status of the Meridian Diplomatic Corps? She asked Lieutenant Rivera. Still in closed session, he replied. Supreme Commander Vextar is facing significant opposition to the partnership proposal. Many of their military hardliners are calling for an immediate alliance with other powers to counter our quantum advantage. The situation was deteriorating faster than even their most pessimistic projections. Humanity had changed the rules of warfare, but they hadn't fully anticipated how quickly the galaxy would try to adapt. Deep in Meridian space, Vextar faced his own crisis. The Council of Elders had convened an emergency session, their crystalline forms glowing with barely contained energy. "You propose alliance with the very species that humiliated our fleet." First Elder Kexna's voice resonated with ancient authority. "They have made us appear weak before the galaxy." "They have shown us the future," Vextar countered, projecting the battle data once again. "Their quantum technology isn't just a weapon, it's a complete reimagining of what's possible, and they're offering to share it." Back on Earth, the quantum detection grid suddenly blazed with warnings. Dr. Webb's hands flew across his console as he interpreted the readings. "Multiple quantum disturbances detected at the edge of the solar system," he announced, his voice tight. They're crude, but someone's attempting to replicate our technology." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Show me." The tactical display revealed 3 vessels of unknown design, their hulls crackling with unstable quantum energy. They were attempting to create their own temporal effects, but without the refined control of the Lazarus ships. "Those quantum fields are dangerously unstable," Dr. Webb warned. "If they lose containment—" He didn't need to finish the thought. An uncontrolled quantum cascade could tear a hole in space-time itself. "All Lazarus vessels, battle stations," Sarah commanded. "Lieutenant Rivera, broadcast on all frequencies. This is Earth Command. Your quantum drives are unstable. Power down immediately or—" The space around the intruding ships suddenly warped, reality itself seeming to stretch and tear. One of the vessels vanished completely, while another appeared to age centuries in seconds, its hull crumbling to dust. "Quantum cascade imminent," Dr. Webb shouted. "The temporal distortions are spreading." Sarah made a split-second decision. "All Lazarus ships, create a containment grid. Full power to quantum drives. We have to isolate that rupture before it spreads." The human vessels moved with precision born of countless drills, forming a complex geometric pattern around the disturbance. Their quantum fields interlocked, creating a bubble of controlled space-time. In his chambers, Vextar received the sensor data with growing horror. By the first light, they're containing a quantum cascade. Something we thought impossible. The Meridian Council watched in stunned silence as humanity's ships demonstrated not just mastery of quantum warfare, but the ability to control its most catastrophic potential effects. "This is why we need the Alliance," Vextar pressed. "Not because we're weak, but because the galaxy is entering an age of quantum manipulation that none of us are prepared for, except them." In Lunar Command, Sarah Chen watched as the Lazarus Fleet stabilized the quantum rupture. The crisis was contained, but the message was clear. Humanity's revelation had started an arms race that threatened the very fabric of space-time. "Dr. Webb," she said quietly, "begin transmitting the quantum safety protocols to all spacefaring species. Encryption level 0. Rivera looked up sharply. "Commander, those protocols are classified." "Not anymore," Sarah cut him off. "We didn't reveal quantum technology to start a war. We did it to change how the galaxy thinks about warfare itself. If we don't share these safety measures, someone's going to tear reality apart trying to replicate what we did." As the transmission went out, signals began pouring in from across the galaxy. The Arcturus Collective went silent, their quantum research claims suddenly forgotten. The Vega Syndicate's threats ceased, and from Meridian space, a single, heavily encrypted message arrived. "The Council has voted. We accept the partnership. The alternative is too dangerous to contemplate." Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief, but she knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had hoped to use quantum technology to end one war. Instead, they had started a race to prevent something far worse: the potential destruction of space-time itself. The galaxy was changing, faster than anyone had predicted. The question now wasn't who would dominate the new quantum age, but who would survive it. Dawn of a new era. The quantum monitoring chamber beneath Lunar Command hummed with activity as representatives from 12 different species worked side by side, their eyes fixed on the swirling holographic display of local spacetime. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the central platform, watching as centuries of interstellar hostility gave way to something unprecedented, cooperation born of necessity. "Another quantum anomaly detected in the Orion sector," announced Dr. Webb, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who hadn't slept in days. "Amateur researchers again, trying to crack quantum manipulation without proper containment protocols." A Meridian scientist, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's blue light, immediately began correlating data. Temporal signature matches previous attempts. They're working from incomplete data intercepted during the battle. "Deploying containment team," Sarah commanded. The response was immediate. A joint task force of human and alien vessels, each crews now trained in quantum safety protocols, moving to prevent another potential cascade. Supreme Commander Vextar, now serving as the Meridian representative to the newly formed Quantum Security Council, stepped closer to the display. 3 months ago, we would have been at war. Now we're preventing someone else's mistakes from unraveling reality itself." Sarah nodded grimly. The partnership between Earth and the Meridian Empire had transformed into something larger than anyone had anticipated. The near disaster with the crude quantum drives had convinced even the most militant species that uncontrolled proliferation of temporal technology couldn't be allowed. "Quantum containment successful," Lieutenant Rivera reported. "Task Force reports minimal temporal distortion. They're implementing the education protocols now." That had been Sarah's idea, treating unauthorized quantum research not as a crime, but as an opportunity to bring more species into the fold of responsible temporal manipulation. Every incident became a chance to spread the proper protocols, to show why cooperation was essential in an age where time itself could be weaponized. Dr. Webb approached with a new set of readings. "The quantum field harmonics are stabilizing across all monitored sectors. The joint patrols are working better than we hoped." But he hesitated, glancing at the Meridian representatives. "Speak freely," Vextar encouraged. "We abandon secrets when we realize their cost." "We're detecting unusual temporal signatures from the galactic core," Webb continued. "They don't match any known quantum patterns, natural or artificial. It's as if something is responding to our manipulation of spacetime." The chamber fell silent. Sarah felt the weight of every eye upon her as she studied the readings. Humanity had introduced quantum warfare to the galaxy, had shown what was possible when civilization pushed beyond the boundaries of conventional physics. But perhaps they had attracted attention they hadn't anticipated. "Quantum technology was never meant to be a weapon," she said finally, addressing the gathered representatives. "It was meant to be a wake-up call. We faced extinction and chose to change the rules rather than accept defeat. Now we're all facing something bigger." The holographic display shifted, showing the strange readings from the galactic core. Patterns that defied conventional analysis, temporal distortions that suggested mastery of quantum mechanics far beyond anything Earth or the Meridians had achieved. "The Alliance protocols are clear," Vextar stated, his translator conveying unwavering resolve. "If one species faces a threat beyond their capability to handle, all members are bound to assist. Earth stood alone against our invasion. You won't stand alone against whatever this is." Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the same mix of determination and possibility that had driven humanity to develop quantum technology in the first place. They had changed the rules of warfare, but in doing so, they'd discovered something far more valuable: the capacity for ancient enemies to become essential allies. "Begin preparations for a joint expedition to the galactic core," she ordered. "All species, all quantum-capable ships. We'll face whatever's out there the same way we prevented temporal warfare from destroying us all, together." The chamber erupted into action, representatives from a dozen worlds coordinating with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Quantum drives were synchronized, temporal shields harmonized, and expedition protocols established with unprecedented cooperation. Dr. Webb worked alongside his Meridian counterparts, their different approaches to science complementing each other in ways that produced breakthrough after breakthrough. "Whatever we find out there," he said quietly to Sarah, "we're better prepared for it than we would have been alone." As she watched the preparations unfold, Sarah Chen reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had developed quantum technology to defend Earth, but they'd ended up defending reality itself. They'd sought to win a war, but had instead found a way to make warfare itself obsolete in the face of greater challenges. The strange signals from the galactic core pulsed on the quantum monitors, a mystery waiting to be solved. But this time, humanity wouldn't face the unknown alone. They had shown the galaxy that the true power of quantum technology wasn't in its capacity for destruction, but in its ability to unite different species in the face of universal challenges. As the joint expedition prepared to depart, Sarah knew that this wasn't just the end of one story. It was the beginning of something far greater. The age of quantum warfare had lasted barely 3 months. The age of quantum cooperation was just beginning, and its possibilities were endless.